Okay guys, now let's try to start our Model 1 cluster. Now we're trying to start two servers which will internally have the unicast J groups already enabled and the replication also enabled. Now if you want to see the commands that we are actually going to execute, so we are talking about Model 1 of cluster. Obviously all clustered servers should only start each in HA profile, whichever model that is. Now we are trying to start two servers in a single box with the offset parameter. Now there's an additional parameter that I have added here, the JBoss node name. Now by this one we can actually distinguish what is the name of our server. So each server on this box is going to have a node name. Now this is also required especially when we are trying to put the servers in a cluster. Now the exact requirement why we need these different names for these nodes, we will talk about it at a later point of time when we deploy the application to this cluster. Let's first set up the cluster. Now this is the additional parameter they've added. So server 1, so both these servers are going to be on same box. Server 1 will start obviously with HA profile with node name server 1. Server 2 also will start with the same profile, but it cannot use the same ports, so it will be using a port offset of 100 as shown in this diagram. That these are the list of ports that the second server will be using, and then this node name is 2. So I'm going to set up these two and start the servers. So here we already have this environment, JBoss environment. We're starting both the servers from the same installation. So let's actually add this the node name parameter to it. I think I've already added this one. So this is the node name parameter that I have added. Now the same thing I'm going to add it to server 2 also. So yeah, this one also has a node name added to it. Now this is a new script. Now that you have node 1 and node 2, let's make sure they come up. Let's kill the existing ones, whatever is running. I think there's one process already running. Let's kill it. So nothing is running at this point. Alright, now let's start the server. Start server 1.sh. Let's look at the log file, lfnf server1.log file. Now your server is coming up. It's already up. Now let's open another session and start server 2. So I'm going to start another session here and could IT log into the same box again. Let's go to our JBoss home, JB1, same box guys we are on. So cd to bin, the second server we're trying to start now. Start server 2. Look at the log file of that server, lfnf server2.log file. Now server 1 and server 2 are up. Now let's open another session to the same box again and try to deploy an application to this cluster. And when we deploy that application to the cluster, if that application has the session replication enabled in it, both these servers will have the replication. So let's go ahead and say it here. JB1 bin a second server and the first server. We can actually check both the servers by using the Java command. So these are the two servers that are running. This is the node name that we just now added. This is server 1 and this is server 2. This is one easy way of distinguishing between the servers. Now both the servers are actually listening on the G group's multicast address. Let's see if we have it. Grep for or less. The J group's multicast address is actually on 230 something. This is not what we are looking for. We were looking earlier also for J group's port number, but it's not visible. That gets activated when you deploy an application. Let's first find out the J group's multicast IP port. That will be in our standalone ha.xml file. So standalone ha. So we want to find out the J groups here. Let's find out further. Yeah, here towards the end, this is the IP port that we're actually looking for. Now let's just make a note of this one. So we'll see if this is actually started when we deploy the application. Usually JBoss has this habit of starting the services only if required. So we need to deploy an application to these two servers so that the J groups actually is visible. Now deploying any application to the JBoss server, we already know. Just copy that var file into that. Let me close all the additional sessions that we have. So this is where we're going to deploy. Now because both these servers have started from the same installation, we can actually deploy the application or copy the var file into the same directory here under deployments, and it will get deployed to both the servers. If the servers have been started from two different installations, we need to start or deploy the application to both the servers. Now before we go into deployment of any application, there is one important thing that we have to understand. See, just any application server provides the ability to replicate the session, but that will be used only if the application asks for it, which means just because if you have a cluster in an app server, it does not mean that every application getting deployed to that app server wants high availability. Now the high availability has to be asked, which means only if an application requires the replication, then only it will be given. Which means just setting up a JBoss cluster does not mean that every application we deploy to it is actually getting replicated. Now the question is then, how do we make an application ask for the session replication? Now that is actually done by adding this distributable tag to the web.xml file of that archive. Now if you have an archive, the web.xml is the deployment descriptor, and you have to add this tag in the web.xml. Now when you add this tag, it means the application wants to be replicated. So when the JBoss is trying to deploy this application, it looks at this distributable tag and it realizes, okay, this application wants to be deployed in a session replication manner. Or in other words, this application wants session replication. Then only the replication will happen. So if there is an application which does not have this distributable tag, even if you have a JBoss cluster, that application will not be session replicated. Now, if you have such an application which has a distributable tag, this entry you're looking at the bottom is the log entry. You will see that in the log there are views of that session. On each server, which is part of the cluster, will have a view. Now in this entry of the log file, you will see server 2 has an entry, server 1 has an entry, which means when we deploy the application, it gets synchronized using InfiniSpan across these two servers which are in the cluster. Now if there are more than two servers, let's say if there is a server 3 also in that cluster, then you will see another element also called server 3/web. So there are 2 points here. The application must ask for replication, which means the web.xml file of the application should have the distributable tag. Then only the JBoss is going to make it replicate. Otherwise, it will not. So now I'm going to put up an application which has this distributable tag enabled. Now we're going to have an application which is this thing. See this one. We have an application encode IT clustered app. Now I will show you. Let me extract this file somewhere. So let's create under temp cd to temp mkdir temp cd to temp. So we are here under temp. So I'm going to copy that file from the original location to this temp directory. Let's copy this file to /temp/temp. Now we want to extract this file and see if the web.xml of this archive has the distributable tag in it or not. So I'm here under temp. Let's extract this file. How do you extract this file? jar xvf. Jar is not found, so we need a Java home. Let's go to one of our Java homes. We'll directly use the path. JBoss ITP. I think we have a JDK here somewhere. Acha, we don't have a JDK. Okay, let's use some other JDK. So any JDK is okay. I just want the jar command from it. Usually it will be under Java home bin, so I'm going to use this one here. So this is the path of Java. Now let's go back to our temp directory. Now we want to extract this one. We'll use the Java home jar xvf the var file. Now it extracted. You have the regular files manifest.mf file and then the web.inf. This is the file we are looking for. Inside this file, we want to see if there is a distributable tag is there or not. So get in there, just get it. Now here we go. This tag basically tells the JBoss servers to replicate all the classes of this application. So now we're going to deploy this var file. Now forget about this thing. I'm going to remove this directory. Just know that we have created, so remove. Now let's go back to where we have our JBoss domain students, JBoss ITP 101, JB1. So now let's go ahead and deploy the application. Now we know deploying application how it's done. We're going to use the simplest of all. So we'll just copy that file into this directory. I think I have already tried the deployment, so I'm going to remove it to make it clear. So this is like a fresh installation. We don't have anything in it. Now let's go ahead and deploy the application. So we have our application in home and code IT, JBoss related files, and there and code IT cluster. Now copy that var file in here. Now when we are doing this, we want to have a look at the log file. See this one. At the very end we have server 1, then we have server 2, and then we have the screen where we are deploying. So when I execute this command here, both these servers will get deployed because for both these servers the deployment location is same. So let's go ahead and watch that carefully, the log files. So this one deployed the application. So here if you see, so this one, what do you see somewhere deployed the application? The same one, see this one, deployed this application. When it is deployed, it actually on the second, see this one here, if you say the number of cluster members is 1 in here initially when this is getting deployed. Then by the time this was deployed, the number of cluster members is 2. Means now the JBoss G groups has started kicking in. That's when you will see the infinite span actually doing its magic, doing the replication. You will also see commands or entries related to J groups also. Let's say here we go. This is a J group entry which is actually doing the replication. Now if you see at the very end on one of these log files, you see how many views are there of this application. It says received new cluster view, server 2 web 1. So this has received, now the total views are 2. On server 2 there is a web application, on server 1 also there is a web application. So here the infinite span actually replicated the sessions across these two servers. Now each server knows about the other server. Now if you remove the application from one of these two servers, you will have only one view. But in our case, we cannot remove it from one server because the deployment location is same. But if you happen to have the two servers from two different locations in the same box, then you can remove from one and you can see the corresponding view going off. Now that we have deployed the application, you should actually see the J group related multicast IP also in the netstat. Earlier when you've seen it, if you remember, we did not see the 230 series IP. I think we copied it somewhere here. So this IP port was not seen. Now let's go ahead and see if this IP port is listening or not. Netstat-NA we did, I'm looking for 230 in this here. Somewhere 230 series. Go down further. This is 224 multicast. Still not there. Netstat-NA grep for 230. Here we go. The 230 is actually listening on UDP. This is a multicast protocol. Why did we not see it when we are doing it like this? Netstat-NA less 230 we're looking for. Here we go. This is the 230. So we actually missed it, I think. So this is the multicast IP port that is getting used to replicate the HTTP sessions. I think there is a problem here. See this one? Failed to recover cluster state after the current node became the coordinator. Something happened here. I'll see that problem. But what actually we did was we created a cluster of 2 servers. We started those servers, then we deployed the application. Now the same things can be done for all models. Now we'll be having a complete dedicated session on implementing the remaining models. Now what we want to do is, with the one model that we have executed, we want to set up the Apache thing so that we have a full-fledged JBoss cluster. What we have done is we have set up Model1, means 2 standalone instances on a single box. Now we want to actually do the remaining part of Apache. That way we'll have a full-fledged cluster. Then once the Apache is installed, we also want to have a proxy plugin configured and see how the proxy plugin redirects the request to all the backend servers. Now the same process has to be repeated for all models. Model 2 actually talks about 2 different boxes, standalone servers. Model 3 is domain mode, single box. Model 4 is domain mode, multi-box. So we will stick to the first model for now, wherein we have started the servers now, we have deployed the application, and the application technically should be accessible on both the IPs. So let's see if the application is accessible. To Jet6, the first port is 8080, encode IT, encode IT.html. Oops. It's not there. Looks like we don't have it. Let's see why it's not accessible. This is the var file. Let's see the contents of the var file. I'm going to create a directory under temp, copy this var file into, I'm trying to troubleshoot why the page is not accessible. First of all, I want to know whether the page was actually there or not. So the jar file, so let's go back. Wow, I just need a Java home to extract the jar file. Okay, so this is the jar file I'm going to use. And chart XVF. The var file. Okay, now I go to the webANF file. We actually have this encode it.html. So the clustered application actually has it, but it's still, this is a static page, so something is going wrong. Let's see. We're trying to look at the log files. So I'm getting into the log file. So there is something with the merging cluster. It says only server 2 has a view. Let's try to have the same thing on server 2 also. 192.168.128.6. The server 2 is actually running on 100 port offset. So if it is 8080, first one, it is going to be 8180. Then encode IT. I think the URL might be wrong. 404 error. Oh, it's going to be this. Bingo. Right. So this is available on second server. The same thing should be available on the first server also. Okay. So this is your first server. So now both servers are able to give you the page. Now you can actually see those no entries as such. So we're able to see both of them. Now we want to set up an Apache in front of these two servers and see if the proxy plugin can actually redirect the requests to both these servers. That's what we want. So we have set up a Model1 cluster. The JGroups is using the multicast to do that communication among these cluster members. InfiniSpan is using the HTTP session replication. Then we have deployed an application which has distributable tag in its deployment descriptor. Now the backend part of our cluster setup is ready. Now what we want now is to have the front end part. All right. So let's go ahead and start the Apache installation and integration. Now the remaining models also we're going to do it, but we'll do it in a separate session. Model 2, Model 3, Model 4 will be doing it. Now let's look at Apache plus JBoss. Alright, so I'm going to stop it here in this session. I'll start a fresh session and we'll have the Apache installation and then the proxy plugin configuration. Then we will see whether Apache is able to redirect the request. Right.